Hello and welcome to the Skiffy and Fandy Show's Torture Cinema.
We're in the Old West, where the outlaws are milquetoast and the vampires are bougie.
He's not that bougie.
Well, he's certainly aspiring to an upper middle class existence, and he's sure dressing up a lot in comparison to everyone else.
Well, that is fair.
And he's bossing people around like he's at the height of bouginess.
Well, I don't know if that well, anyway, that's
There's a
neither here
distinct
nor there.
Karen aspect. He's got, there's a distinct Karen vibe happening with him a lot.
Yes, definitely.
Fair enough. Well, I'm Shaun.
I'm David.
I'm Daniel.
And today we're talking about the 1966 film Billy the Kid versus Dracula. You heard that right. That is the name of the movie. Directed by the prolific William Bodine and written by Carl K. Hittleman, it stars John Carradine, Chuck Courtney, Melinda Plowman, Virginia Christine, and others, including Bing Russell, father of Kurt, Olive Carey and her son Harry Carey Jr. What a name. Richard Reeves and George Cissar, I guess. Billy the Kid vs. Dracula has a 3.8 rating on IMDb and a 17% on Rotten Tomatoes popcorn meter.
Film was selected by our Patreon supporters based on a poll of X versus Y, a theme suggested by Dan the Transient. Alien versus Predator and Dollman versus Demonic Toys each got some votes, but couldn't overcome this monster Western mashup. If you're not yet subscribed to our Patreon, please join and get a chance to suggest further torture for us. Force it upon us, or specifically Shaun, by voting in upcoming polls, and even join us watching it live on Discord, all for as low as $1 a month.
Okay, David and Daniel, because Daniel wrote the script, but you know I have been doing torture cinema since we started, and I have missed, I think, 3 maybe? And so I've done almost 150 so-called bad movies for this thing.
Specifically you.
And
remember that
movies.
We also vote.
Well, I know, but like you got to do better than this, David. This is not that
What
bad.
I'm given.
Fair enough. That's fair. I did make the poll. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so before we dive into the mess that is this film, let's get to what we are drinking. Please remember, you must drink responsibly. Alcohol is not required on our show, and you are not required to drink alcohol, but if you like to imbibe alcohol, do it legally, and do it smart by staying home and not driving, and just enjoying yourself in a very casual, calm way. Go seek help if you have a problem. So, with that in mind, David, what are you drinking?
Some 15-year-old Bowmore Scotch.
Dang.
Daniel, what are you drinking?
Oh, no, hold on. I want
It
you
smells very peaty and smoky, and maybe this isn't the moment to be smelling something smoky and liking it with the province on fire. But anyway, I'm enjoying it all the same.
Okay.
I didn't realize that fires were going on. I'm sorry. So I have, I think it's technically called an apple Moscow Mule. And so it is ginger beer, apple cider, and like hard cider, vodka, an Icelandic vodka, and a lime wedge. And the cider that I chose is a ghost pepper cider, so it has a really nice bite along with the crisp.
I have an infuser, and I once made habanero infused vodka.
Ooh.
To put into mules. Because you just put a little bit in, and it gives you that little heat, but it goes away real quick.
You injected it into mules?
No, I put it
Wouldn't
in,
they,
like you put a little...
Or...
No, okay, you infuse habanero peppers, you just cut them up, put them in your vodka, and then strain the vodka. Depending on how much you want your soul to die, that's how long you should leave the peppers in. But usually like 24 hours, maybe a day or two, right? Something like that. And then you drain it, and then you just use little bits of it in any mule format that you want, and it gives you that little ring of heat from the habanero, but it doesn't stick around so that it burns you out. It just kind of goes in and then out really quick. It's a very pleasant feeling.
And you're good.
And you don't need an infuser. You can just do it with a mason jar. Like, it doesn't, anything you can stick the peppers in, it'll infuse.
Yeah.
So, there you go.
Well, what are you drinking now, Shaun?
I am drinking St. Remy Visop with a ginger ale in here, because I don't have a lot of alcohol anymore since I moved to Iowa, and I don't have a justification to spend $300 on a new supply. So this is what I had, and that's what we're getting. It's not great.
It serves its purpose.
I could have gotten a French Connection again, and I would have been much happier, but oh well. All right. So David has been elected to summarize this movie. So David, what is Billy the Kid versus Dracula?
Well, John Carradine is Dracula, and he is a traveling coach, and sees the image of the daughter of one of the passengers. He sees her portrait and decides she's pretty hot. So he sets in motion, rather, the chain of events that will lead to all the passengers on this coach being slaughtered, which allows him to then steal the identity of the aforementioned young woman's uncle, whom she has never met. He then descends upon the ranch, posing as the uncle, and starts, working up some victims. There's some of the people that he recently attacked. They've also arrived in town, and they know who he is, and so they try to raise the alarm. The heroine does not want to hear anything nasty said about her uncle, but her fiance, who happens to be Billy the Kid, in the most anodyne version imaginable. All right, he's got all the edges of a rounded bar of soap. He thinks that something is amiss, and so we eventually move to the confrontation of the title.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically the movie. Yeah. It is about as in-depth and exciting as exactly how David described it. I read a review somewhere that basically complained, and I don't remember who it was, but they complained that if only they'd spent more time talking about the vampire lord, this might have been better.
Well, I mean, it does.
Or Billy the Kid.
Yeah, yes, I mean it's part of that long tradition of B westerns where you have a name brand outlaw who has absolutely no relation to the actual historical figure other than the box office name.
Yeah. Hence the other film that was made, Jesse James and Frankenstein's Daughter. Yeah, which has Jesse James in it. I do find it amusing that they make Billy the Kid vaguely handsome in this, because when you look at actual pictures of Billy the Kid, he had a face for radio, so which hadn't been invented, I think, at the time he was outlawing. So, so there you go. Anyway, well, why don't we get to likes, and we'll go through those because we can. I think last time I made David go first, so I'm not going to do that this time. Instead, Daniel, you'll go first.
Oh joy. I guess my greatest like for this movie is that right from the beginning, it brought back the vibes of Universal Monster Classic movies. The mechanics of this movie were very reminiscent of the classic Universal movies, and I think a lot of that has to do with Bodine's experience going all the way back to the silent era. And after I was done watching this, I actually started watching, is it Annie Doodle? Annie... Can't think of the name now of the movie. Annie Rooney. Little Annie Rooney. Silent movie with Mary Pickford that he did.
Oh,
and
okay.
So this movie is shot largely like a silent movie would be shot, but with the sounds. A lot like, the 1931 Dracula would be. And it has the silliness of the later Universal Monster Pictures here. It doesn't have as much soul to it, and it's pretty lifeless compared to them, but I definitely liked the vibes that include a lot of, like, a large cast of character actors that give a little bit of spice to the movie, given the very bland performance by Carradine and the guy who plays Billy the Kid. Even though those title characters weren't the greatest, I actually found myself liking the secondary characters and being much more interested than they were when they were in scenes. And that, to me, was very reminiscent of watching some of those old classic monster movies where some of the secondary characters were the most fun to see on the screen. So yeah, that I would say was the main for me.
I guess the vibe is helped in no small part by the fact that Carradine is playing Dracula, right, which he had done twice for Universal in House of Dracula and House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula. So he almost looks like he just walked off one set, 20 years earlier, and onto this one.
But Dracula's never
a little more
lifelessly
here, but
yeah, though he's got some good, sort of, wide-eyed moments. I mean, the ham kicks in now and then, right? One thing I certainly will say that when you compare it to most of the other Carradine films from this period, where he, basically is sitting behind a desk for whatever scenes he shot in a day. He's actually here for he is the lead. And he does. I mean, he does consider
he's active. He's moving around.
Yeah, I mean, he called this the worst film he ever made. I think that's debatable. But he's there, right? He's doing the whole shtick. So it's if you're tuning in, looking at a mid-60s movie with Carradine in it, this is the one that's going to deliver the goods in a way that most of the others don't.
This, for those that don't have the video on,
if
you're listening to this later, like, Daniel started this by making the eyes, but like literally one of the second scene we get him is in a carriage, and he's with Mrs. Bentley and Mr. Underhill, who they're brother and sister, and he gets a picture of Mrs. Bentley's child and begins and looks at it because she says that she's 18 and beautiful. And his response is first to do this, like, it hurts my eyes to do this, like, evil, wicked stare, which, by the way, I guess is technically supposed to be night. So we're supposed to imagine they can't see it, but no, they can see his creepy stare. And if they couldn't see his creepy stare, he follows that by being like 18 and beautiful, which is the kind of shit you would expect from Dazed and Confused, right? Where the guy says, that's why I like high school girls, like that's what you would expect at this moment. And my whole thing, the whole movie was, why is it taking everybody other than Billy the Kid and as Dracula keeps referring to them as the immigrants, right? Why is
German
everybody
mama
else,
and papa,
right? Mama and papa, right? Why is everybody else not going, there's just something wrong about this guy, because he is weird the whole time. He's never normal. Nothing he does is normal. He does the creepy stare at people. He says things that like make it, or just like the weirdest ways of saying things. He talks like how you would imagine a vampire with bad social skills would talk.
But bear in mind, these are people for whom someone getting shot to death in the tavern is Monday.
Yeah, but that's normal.
Exactly.
But creepy
yes,
eye
but
guy
his appearance is
going,
completely abnormal.
Okay, well,
in this context.
It's just a different time, is what you're telling us.
What I find funny about that bug-eyed stare is that, it's kind of taking Bela Lugosi's stare of hypnotic stare and dialing it to 11. But there's no purpose behind it that I can gather other than to show that this intense interest.
And
it's not like at those moments he's trying to hypnotize or trying to ensnare, captivate anybody, right?
Well, sometimes he is, right? Sometimes, like certainly with the heroine, it seems that he is
That's true.
hypnotizing. But the thing is, Lugosi never went wide-eyed. Like Lugosi didn't imitate Marty Feldman, right? Which is what we're getting with Carradine.
Yes. Yeah.
He would, if anything, his eyes might narrow, and then we'd get, the pinpricks of light shot in the close up of the eyes. Here it's just
Yeah.
okay, red wash, and the
Yeah.
bug eye, right? So yeah, it doesn't have quite the same effect.
It, yeah, you're right, Dave. I was thinking exactly when you were starting to talk about how it was different, right? That very famous image of the like light on his eyes shadowing the rest of his face so that we see his eyes, and it makes them seem like they pop out more. Whereas in this, like you can see the difference in his facial structure between when he's just like normal Carradine face and then like the bug-eyed Carradine face. And there isn't any of that lighting trickery. Apparently, by the way, I just want to note, we watched a low quality version of this, which I think was actually to our benefit, because there is, I guess, a higher definition version that I didn't realize existed that we could have watched. Because one of the things I liked in this film is a thing that apparently doesn't exist in higher quality versions, which is there's the sequence when the native peoples are like chasing down the stagecoach, and one of the shots has those red mountains in the background, but they're in shadow. And in lower quality versions of this, that you can't really make out that they're those hills. You just get it's like the whole sky just goes black, but the ground isn't, which is such a cool shot until I watched the version that's in higher quality and went, oh no, that shot's not cool anymore. It's made me sad because it was kind of neat, and I thought they did that on purpose somehow, but no, they didn't.
Well, what is your reel like then?
My
that
reel
actually
like
holds up between qualities of transfer.
I think my favorite, there are two things that are like my favorite. One is kind of what you were saying, Daniel, which wasn't really your like, but came out of it, which is there are like a lot of very fun like characters. They're not really fully fleshed characters, but they're like very like almost like stock Western characters. Like Joe Flake is one of my favorite characters, and he literally is in it for one scene and then dies, which is he's the whiskey salesman. Played by George Cesar, who is hilarious and adorable, and I love him. I love Mrs. Bentley. She is adorable as well and such a sweetheart. I even love the friggin' doctor lady, right? Dr. Henrietta Hall,
awesome.
played by Olive Carey.
Yeah, she's really good.
She was our Van Helsing, and she rocked.
She was great. They gave her good lines, and like she was a lot of fun to watch. I just love all of the like little characters. I wish they'd gotten more to do, and some of them didn't get killed off so quickly, but such is life. The other thing that I like, which actually is tied to the Henrietta Hall played by Olive Carey thing, which is this is one of those fun parts of cinema, like periods of cinema, where you can still have actors who started as silent film actors who are now doing talkies, right? And it's always kind of fun to just get lost in IMDb looking for like what movies did they do, when did they start, because Olive Carey started in silent films, obviously the director Bodine started in silent films,
and the mother
well. Like there's a whole bunch of older actors in this who got their breaks in silent film. Some of them obviously didn't have much careers outside of silent film, and it just reminds me, and I'm sure David will appreciate this, of like how interesting the silent film era really is. And it's just kind of unfortunate that so much of it is like gone, and we don't talk about it really as much as we should, even though some really cool stuff happens in the silent film era. So that's the thing I like.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. Yeah, there is that sense of history. I mean, again, worth remembering that this is, almost 40 years after the end of the silent era. So it's ancient history too. But you do have that sense of continuity that you're describing there.
I think this movie sort of going with the vibes that it gave me, it really does feel like a movie that was made much closer to the end of the silent era than it actually was. It it feels like something that would have been made in the late 40s as opposed to the late
Except
60s
in color.
to me.
Yes.
Except in color.
Yeah. Which is actually directly connected to my like.
Go.
So what my big like about it is that it isn't. It's not any better, but it's also not any worse than your typical Poverty Row Western, and William Bodine did a lot of those, right? That was certainly, I mean, well, everybody who was just churning this films out would have done them. I mean, like the so-called series Western, not necessarily about a series character or in a series, but the really sort of B westerns, Poverty Row westerns, out of which hundreds would come out every year in the 30s and 40s, and this has that feel to it, right? And I think it's so. This and Jesse James Meets Frankenstein's Daughter are are Bodine's last films, and they're not, strictly speaking, Poverty Row, because that era ended at the end of the 40s. But it feels, in many ways, feels like a holdover. Yeah, if you took, as both of you are saying, if you took away the color, this could easily be 1945, not 1966 or 1965. And so like all the stuff that doesn't work particular. That's not doesn't it's not a standout. It's not it's not a lost gem or anything like that. But it's not a disaster either, right? And I mean, this is I think uh, I mean, whenever I see William Bodine's name show up in the credits, I get a little smile because I mean, on the one hand, he's the hack's hack, right? And we hacks have to stick together, and I say this with love and with pride, right? This is a guy who did some 179 films. He wasn't an auteur. Right, in the same way that, say, Jess Franco, who churned out a similar number of films, absolutely is. Bodine isn't and would never pretend to be, as opposed to some of the situations that we have now, where we have people who are not auteurs but have mistaken themselves for that, and then they're at the helms of $350 million films. Whereas Bodine was. When I think of him, I also think of the title of Jimmy Sangster's autobiography, "Wanted Good or Tuesday." And Bodine was definitely the guy you got in when you wanted it Tuesday, right? And sometimes he'd get it to you Monday. But he was a consummate professional. Apparently, he cultivated a very friendly atmosphere on his sets. People really liked working with him. I mean, he directed half of the Bowery Boys films, and if to have survived with your sanity intact, dealing with the Bowery Boys for something like 24 movies, that's some real, staying power. So, it is a professional piece of work. Right, the camera's pointing in the right direction. We're not getting, the 180-degree rule isn't being violated. Everything flows in the storytelling is clean. It does the job, right, and then it gets out, and that's all that it was ever intended to do. And again, is it a stellar piece of filmmaking? No. Uh, do I like it as well as some of Bodine's earlier films like The Ape Man or Voodoo Man? No. But it's still, there's a lot of other stuff that is also that is not competent, which this is. Right. And so so kudos to him on that front. And so I guess that's sort of in broad terms my big like for it.
Are you a fan of Westerns as a genre? And I was unfamiliar with that term that you were talking, what Western?
The series Western? Yeah, I mean, yeah, the series Western, or I mean, a lot of them in the 30s and 40s were. Oh, so Poverty Row? Is that what you meant? Is that
Poverty Row? That's
Poverty Row. Yeah, that's goes back to
okay.
our.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Poverty Row studios were like during the sort of refers to the minor studios during the studio era, right? So primarily we're talking about the 30s and 40s. And so at this time you had the majors, right? So MGM, Paramount, 20th Century Fox, RKO, and oh, I probably missed one. There were five. There were the five majors, and then there were a couple of the smaller ones like Universal and United Artists. But anyway, the big five owned all the theaters, right? And so they controlled the distribution of everything. But there were independently owned theaters, and they still needed product, but they couldn't book the big movies. And so you had the minor studios of so-called Poverty Row that
Putting these
produced.
out. Okay.
Right, but they were, actual studios. They had their standing sets. It wasn't like by the time we of this film, we're in a different era, and it's more like the independent producers, right, and other companies like American International are now on the scene. But in the Poverty Row era, you had these standing studios. Monogram and PRC are probably the most familiar. Right, the biggest of the Poverty Row studios was Republic, and they absolutely owned the Western, but they in fact reached the point where they were like bordering on major studio as their product improved. So and this but so Bodine was like after he was kind of a prestige director in the 20s, but after a career interruption when he came back to the States, he wasn't getting those jobs anymore. So he was a lifer in the Poverty Row uh, 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 mill, and so this film again feels like it has all the hallmarks of a Poverty Row
Mm.
film, other than the color. Right? It's like a last gasp of something, even though the studios themselves had long since vanished. But it's got that feel to it. It's shot at a standing, like on a ranch, right, where so many of these movies were shot. It's so it it has a lot, and then with some of the cast that's been pointed out, so it's got a lot of the aura of those films.
Well, pointing out Republic Pictures, I assume, is who you're talking about,
Yeah.
which I will note technically relaunched in 2023. I don't know what that means, but it was relaunched, but it's
I
owned
don't
by
know that.
Paramount now, I believe.
Oh.
But you mentioned that Republic is like really known for doing the Western, and I think that's absolutely correct, and also slightly underselling, because they sort of were one of the film studios that helped bring us the careers of like Roy Rogers, Gene Autry,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
think the big one, which would be John Wayne, because they were in some of their films, and they did, I don't know, like 1,000 pictures. Like you could spend the next year and a half trying to watch everything Republic Pictures released if you could find it all, and you would probably still need more time. Your brain would also probably melt, but there you go.
Well, though there's was certainly like a higher caliber thing, right? Like Billy the Kid versus Dracula would have been beneath the notice for Republic, right? But it would have fit right in with Monogram or PRC or Chesterfield. And you mentioned Gene Autry. I mean, though the film that made him a star was in fact not Republic. I forget who did it, but it was a serial called The Phantom Empire, which
Oh.
Mm.
is, that's the Western that has all of the underground civilizations, robots, and laser beams that you expect in a Western.
Oh, that sounds fun. We should watch that.
They've done that on Mystery Science Theater, haven't they? The Phantom Empire.
Well, it would have to
I
be an
know I've
edited
seen
version
it.
because the full version runs,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, it's 12
Yeah.
episodes, or 12
They
to
just
15.
did certain shorts or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or
Oh,
they
we should
they would
watch
it
that.
would get it would have been re-edited as a feature presentation as well. So they may have done that one. Yeah.
Oh, he's a singing cowboy who runs Radio Ranch, a dude ranch
Yes.
in the Phantom Empire.
And Radio Ranch happens to have a huge radium deposit there that the bad guys want.
Mm.
But
Oh,
then there's also the lost civilization of Mu that's just underneath, and it's pretty awesome.
that I think we should watch that at some point. It's only
I've wanted
245
to do a
minutes for all
serial
12.
short.
Yeah, it's
Well, there's shortened cuts that you
yeah.
can watch, at least of many of them.
Yeah.
But
And so it wasn't
this,
meant to be seen all at one go, right? It
Yeah.
was you'd be seeing it in weekly installments.
I want it, and it apparently cost $75,000 back then.
Hey, and since we on the subject of budget, if I may mention two other points of William Bodine. Actually, first, just incidentally, I need to correct an error in the Wikipedia entry on Bodine, which says that the Medved brothers gave him the nickname One Shot, which is not true. Because it's the entry says they did that in the Golden Turkey Awards in 1980. Well, here is Dennis Gifford writing about actually Roger Corman. This is 1973. And he says, thus, Roger Corman left bellhopping behind for good and launched into a quickie career that would make even William One Shot Bodine and B. Reeves Breezy Eason look like Cecil B. DeMille. Uh, anyway, so yeah, that was earlier. But among Bodine's other accomplishments was one of the probably the ultimate golden age exploitation film, Mom and Dad, the
Oh yeah.
ultimate sex hygiene
Mm.
film, right? And so now so it's been calculated that film made between so this is 1945, made between 40 and $100 million. Which now, if those are 1945 dollars, in today's terms, that's between 713 million and 1.78 billion, right? But
Hot damn.
that's hard to know. But the it also is calculated if we just go by ticket sales, right? That apparently 175 million people saw Mom and Dad, which means it was a bigger movie than the Avengers, right? So
Nice.
that's yeah. Man has some accomplishments to his name, and this is the more impressive because it's a smaller population, just empirically, right?
Yeah.
And China is not a market, so
Back when
there you
cinema
go.
ruled here, though.
Yeah. And fun fact, that film has a penis in it.
And a birth.
It also has a birth. It also has a C-section, doesn't it?
Don't know. Yeah, no,
Well, look,
yeah,
I was clicking through because I was like, "What
yeah.
is this film?" And I saw some stuff that I don't remember from any other time but health class. So
Yeah.
they talked about STDs in it too, and they
Yeah,
showed
well,
a
that was
picture of a guy with his mouth open. I don't know what they were trying to show me, but I assume it was a disease.
that was a very like it was sort of part of a really big subgenre of exploitation films. Yeah, like the sex hygiene movies. Also, they're sometimes known as the clap operas. And yeah, they had lots of footage of things you'd rather not see.
I mean, it's educational, so
That's how they got it. That's how they got to show it, right? These were obviously films that never went through the production code, and but they would largely get around, well, as much as possible anyway, get around local censor boards by saying, yeah, it's educational, right? And here's some the pamphlets that are going to be passed out into the audience, and
yeah.
yeah, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, right? This is
I mean,
before the nudie futies.
I think the most interesting thing about this film is the fact that there's so many things we can bring in around the film to talk about how we get to this film.
The storied career of Bodine.
Well, because it kind of, I mean, I don't know a lot about Bodine, but he's obviously popular enough that there are a handful of academic books like written about his work. And I think that says something about his career. He's significant enough to warrant them. He's no Roger Corman in terms of the amount of work on him, but
No.
I don't
Well,
know.
I mean, because he never really, I mean, because Corman, you can say is an auteur, right?
Mm,
There's, especially, with like the films that he cared about, right? And also with Corman, there's, um, when you look at uh, something like It Conquered the World, and you compare it to the same sort of product being made by other directors at the same time, right? And just the skill that Corman deploys in that little film is manifest. You can see it even more clearly when you look at its remake, Zontar, the Thing from Venus, by Larry Buchanan, and it's the same plot. It's it's basically the same everything, and it doesn't work nearly as well. Bodine, you don't have that same. There's not. You don't have his masterpieces, right, or his different auteur periods, right? Because again, that's not certainly not how he saw himself, right? He was just getting the job done.
Yeah, and I don't think you could watch clips of his and recognize like a style per se.
No, I don't think so
Like
either. Right?
So that's unique to him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. One
right,
last
we
little
need to
fact.
get to dislikes.
Well, hold on. One fact. I'm going to give one more little fact, which is
right.
William Bodine did also direct, I think, at least one Charlie Chan film, which is a franchise of films about a Chinese, I guess you'd call him, detective, similar to like a Mr. Magoo type figure, sort of bumbling figure at times.
I think Mr. Moto, I think you mean, rather than Mr. Magoo.
Yeah.
Yes, excuse me, Mr. Bodo. But is, I think, historically played by white actors. And I think the last Charlie Chan film, came out in 1981. I think it's the last one that ever came out.
And so, he would have, I guess if he, whichever one he did, probably was not part of the main series. Though, I mean, there were so many different, I
think it's Golden Compass is the one that he did, I think.
Golden Compass?
I think it's Golden Compass. Am I not wrong? Well, we're just like Googling stuff because we want to know. Yes. Golden Eye. Excuse me. Golden Eye, not Golden Compass. Golden Compass is a very different creator. Not to be confused, by the way, with James Bond.
With the James Bond film? Yeah, 1948. Yeah. Okay, so by now it's Roland Winters playing Charlie Chan, not Warner Oland. I think briefly the actor who played there was Charlie Chan's number one son in the Warner Oland series took over the role. So at least briefly there was a point where the character was not played by a white actor. It didn't happen often.
Who was the Chinese character played by Boris Karloff?
Mr. Wong.
Who was in Charlie Chan? Mr. Wong. That's it. Okay. Yeah, I've seen several of those.
Also, Fu Manchu.
I just thought I would bring, Fu Manchu, very different thing. But anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up because I thought it was interesting. I have never seen a Charlie Chan film in my entire life. I have seen clips, but there you go.
Out there, I mean, adjusting for the fact of the casting and the the expected caveats, right? But they're entertaining murder mysteries. Especially the sort of the classic Warner Oland ones. They're good fun.
Fair enough. Well, let's get to dislikes. Daniel, what don't you like about this movie?
What I don't like is that Dracula and Billy the Kid are in there title only. You don't really get the sense, like, you have like David said, the rounded bar of soap, in terms of Billy the Kid. No relation to the historical Billy the Kid whatsoever. Like, just call him another character, another name. It makes no sense. Dracula, similarly, this is like one of the most toothless Draculas that I've seen in a film before.
But he leaves four holes when he bites people, though, doesn't he?
Yes, he leaves some puncture marks in there, and he chooses a new spot when he bites them a second time. But but like that's the only evidence we have of teeth here. I was just disappointed with how weak those two elements were, and then another minor annoyance was, maybe somebody else has an explanation for this, but when Billy the Kid finally stakes Dracula at the end of the movie, like, the body's there, but then like the a bat flies and just like collapses outside. And it's like, if the body's there, why is the bat flying around?
Yeah,
that pissed me off.
Bizarre.
Like that made no sense whatsoever.
None.
Like if he had tried to change it to the bat at the last moment, but he was stabbed already through the heart, and so he collapsed, that would make sense.
The bat dies too, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Well, at least it falls to the earth, so you assume it's dead because it's not fluttering around anymore. But
that made no sense, though. I kind of liked it just because it was so odd.
Fair.
I mean, most of this film doesn't make terribly much sense.
No, there's like you mentioned before, the lack of vampire lore. Like, there's no clear goal here of he wants to find his mate, but
does he?
It's unclear exactly how he turns her into or is going to turn her into a vampire versus just kill her. He mentions, or somebody mentions at some point, that the vampire can suck the blood, and sometimes it kills you, sometimes it turns you into a vampire, but it can be kind of either this or either that, and there's no explanation of which way it's going to go or why, like what the logic would be. He seems to be like a horny old man.
Yes, he
and
is.
They just happen to call him Dracula.
Literally, one of his lines.
I guess that's what it really comes down to. And Billy the Kid is just like a, mild-mannered fiance that if you insult him heavily enough, and he is a good shot, right?
Yeah.
With the gun, with the pistol.
Which is useless in this context.
Which is useless in the context of fighting a vampire, right?
No. He can throw a shoe, though.
Yeah.
He throws like a rock
yes,
or whatever.
He can knock Dracula out by throwing... He throws the gun at him?
Yeah, he throws the gun.
Because it's got
when
wood.
He finds the gun, when the pistol doesn't work with the bullets, he just throws the gun and knocks Dracula out.
The only time in film history where that has actually worked.
Yes. And they're in a silver mine. I kept thinking, okay, this is a silver mine. This is going to come into the plot because vampires can be killed by silver or something. And we were going to kind of use the werewolf vampire mythos here somehow. And then that never even plays into anything.
You gotta love the fact that you see him making the bed in the mine. I mean, that's a nice little touch. But I have to say
many wasted opportunities.
But I have to say on the subject of the lore, that I think in fairness, I think that the film quite rightly assumes that we basically know it, right? And there is a pretty established tradition of the vampires will turn some people and not bother with others, right? And it's a thing they do, and the film doesn't give us the precise mechanics about it because we don't need to know what they are. And so in his kind of random picking one particular victim because he has the hots for her and then focusing on her and deciding he wants to turn her, I mean, we're going straight back to Bram Stoker's novel here. Right? It's and then the other stuff we get the garlic, the wolfsbane, and we have the mirror thing. So and the sleeping during the day, like the basics are there, right? And it's a little bit like past a certain, like in the early zombie movies, and for that matter, the early vampire films, the films had to give you the lore, had to explain things. In fact, for quite a while, had to define what a zombie was. And then by the time we get to Revenge of the Zombies, they're just zombies. We can just call them zombies. We don't need to explain what they are anymore. And I feel like what we get here, it's the shorthand lore, right? You recognize these things. These are the ones we're going to use. The other stuff, we don't care.
You're technically correct. But it is also he's not anybody. He's just like the most basic vampire.
Does he really even need to be a vampire in this?
Right, does he need to be Dracula? No, he could just be regular, vampire Grandpa Joe. That's who he could be. But what we get is, but remember the title. The title says he's Dracula, but he's not Dracula, right? And
did they even use his name at all in the film?
No. The only name he takes, if I'm correct, is Mr. Underhill when he escapes the attack on the stagecoach that kills actual Underhill, right? And
That's
so
kind of
as
nice
far
because
as
that's where he sleeps.
well, I mean, fair point, you know. I just feel
It's
like
more of a name for a hobbit.
he's supposed to be like monstrous, right? And we're supposed to find him like kind of scary because he's so not human. The problem is that I just don't buy him as not full. Not, I mean, I know he literally isn't human because like he's a vampire, right? I get that I can make the logical leap, but the things that he does and the way that he acts are things that seem to have an undisclosed motivation that I find perplexing and confusing. Right? Like, I guess it's going back to the Bram Stoker, but his whole, like, 18 and pretty, like, which just makes my skin crawl. And why it doesn't make anybody else's skin crawl, I don't get. And we get all kinds of weird things where he just sort of takes control and then says the most insane things like, she can't fire, he can't fire Billy the Kid because technically Betty has the one that controls it. But no, he's the guardian and she won't have any power, I guess, till she's 21. So it doesn't matter to lock her into a room. There's just like weird, he's so obvious in his weirdness, but yet he's supposed to be in a domestic setting not being weird. But he is. And why nobody else, it's just my endless thing is going to be like, why does nobody else go, this guy's not right.
German mama gets it.
Yeah.
I mean, they do, and it does take an enormously long time for
really,
like the local sheriff or basically anyone other than Billy the Kid to start like maybe doing some basic investigation. Mr. Underhill showed up being weird and wanted a room and not to be disturbed before the stagecoach that we now just found out everyone died in. And there's an undisclosed body in the stagecoach that was supposed to be Mr. Underhill, but nobody bothers to research that until like halfway, So
who is this? And who is this unidentified body?
Yeah, fair point. Yeah.
Right? Who is he? Nobody knows. He's just a drifter. They just found him, right? But that's how they found Dracula, right? Because they, as Mrs. Bentley says, they stopped in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night to pick him up, which means he arranged to be picked up in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere by the stagecoach. Why? Why just go to a normal place like a? Why? You don't have to.
Or why
be
not
weird.
just fly the?
He's a vampire.
He flew to the place as a bat. Like,
right.
was he
But
getting
he could
tired
go to a
flapping?
normal place to be picked up, like a town. Right?
He could have just flown the whole way.
He's being deliberately ridiculous. And also, why does he need to take a stagecoach? He could just fly to towns. He does that already. So why doesn't he just go where he knows people are so he can suck their blood by hiding in the shadows? He's like the weirdest serial killer bloodsucker ever. I hate him.
I'll order, but
because a stagecoach is where he finds the portraits of the women that he's going to target.
That's how he gets the scheme. And it's no fun being a vampire if you don't scheme.
When I need to find new pictures of young women to hunt down, I ride the stagecoach. Where do I ride it? Anywhere with a large population? Nope. I go real far west where ain't nobody live. Because that's how you find the good ones.
We're sounding very Romanian just there.
No. See, unlike Dracula, I don't dislike the immigrants in this. I think they're perfectly fine people.
Which is also weird since he would be one, right?
Right. Because if he's Dracula, he's not from here. Why does he not have an accent? So. Oh, he's rich. Oh, there it is. Yeah. He paid for an accent coach. I will just say that is the thing I hate about this film, and then I'll shut up because I think it's technically David's turn, which is like this film is racist, and I'm not a fan. I get, to me, it makes sense why Dracula would blame the immigrants and take advantage of all of their stuff. So that kind of makes a sense in the plot. of like, we're gonna get rid of those immigrants, which it kind of makes sense. But like the whole Western tradition of just red face and being referring to like indigenous peoples as savages, and then in this film going the extra mile of just making them savage because they just automatically assume the stagecoach was somehow involved.
Technically, they're right.
Well, they're technically right, but yeah.
But they just kill everybody.
Yeah, right. They kill Mrs. Bentley, who ain't done nothing, and Joe Flake, who probably would have been happy to share his whiskey.
So, if one of them's a vampire, I mean, there is a certain sense in what better get rid of them, all of them, just to be on the safe side. Unfortunately, yeah,
you're not wrong.
The plan was sound.
Poor Joe Flake, though, and Mrs. Bentley. They're just fun. Anyway, David, what is your dislike? We've done you, Daniel, right? Okay, so okay, go.
Yeah.
It's actually very closely linked to what both of you were saying, and that is the film can't quite get the Western horror hybrid right. That now this is a very, very difficult combination, right? Very, very few films have gotten it right. And this is because the Western is I would say we could let's call it perhaps a either closely related or maybe even a subcategory of the action film. But so the action heavy movie, whether it's the action film, the adventure film, the Western, or the heroic fantasy, those are very uneasy mixes with horror. Right? Because if you've got, your powerful hero, then it's going to be hard to make things scary. Right. And so you've got a built-in problem right there in the title. Right. This film can't quite square the circle. It almost gets it right at the end when Billy the Kid's technique, his Western rules aren't working. It's just too bad that it's all dealt with inside of 30 seconds. And there are moments elsewhere where you're almost there, except you'll notice how for the most part Dracula isn't really doing Dracula stuff, right? He's just being a Western heavy, right? Like most of this just feels like a Western, and there's the occasional grace notes of horror, but like the combination isn't there. Like if you like just a few years earlier in 1958, you have Curse of the Undead, which does a much better job of fusing the two, because there your vampire is a gunslinger and is basically, he's a chess player in a town full of checkers players, right? Like he is, it verges on the meta in that he takes advantage of the fact that, well, no one believes in vampires, right? So everybody is playing by Western rules, and he's completely immune to those, right? So every time there's a showdown, he wins, even though his victims are absolutely positive they shot first. But how come they're dead and he's untouched? And he's only defeated when a priest shifts to horror movie rules. Right? And the vampire gets cocky because he doesn't think anybody is playing by horror movie rules, right? But the priest gets a crucifix. Yeah, he gets a crucifix marked bullet. So there you actually do have this fusion. And just the year before, actually made the same year as. Billy the Kid versus Dracula and Jesse James meets Frankenstein is The Devil's Mistress. And this was done on a budget that makes Billy the Kid meets Dracula look like Heaven's Gate. But it too is like a very, very, very stripped down to the bone a story that fuses the Western and the supernatural, I think, really quite effectively for something so tiny. And then just a few later ones I'd mention would be Dead Birds from 2004, The Burrowers from 2008, and Bone Tomahawk from 2015. But it's a very rare, like there's hardly any successful Western and horror hybrids right? That don't say devolve into comedy, and this is another of the unsuccessful ones. I think of the two Bodine ones, I think I would lean slightly towards so James Meets Frankenstein's Daughter, because we've got a female mad scientist, which is pretty rare, and she kind of it's a little more gothic, and she kind of sinks her teeth into that role, but it's still ultimately it's not really pulling it off. And so that's, I guess that would be my main dislike. It did tackle something that very few people have successfully done, but it doesn't pull it off either.
No, even the sort of antagonist, the other antagonist for Billy the Kid is this other ranch hand that's in sort of this competitive role and really wants to take over, right?
Yeah.
And that would be he ends up acting as Dracula's lackey, but in the same way it would be in a Western, as opposed to a minion of Dracula that you'd expect from a horror movie.
Yeah.
And that would be a great opportunity that could have used supernatural compelling of him to build on sort of his personality as a character, but they don't go down that route at all, right? They just go down the route of macho competition that you'd have in sort of the macho independence kind of heroic the themes that you'd have in Westerns.
Completely agree. I think it's a really good example. Yeah, absolutely.
In fairness to him, my understanding of the plot of this is that Billy the Kid wooed Betty, who's basically in charge, and has now woven his way in. Now, Billy the Kid, as far as I can tell in this, is not really playing. He's not really the Billy the Kid, the outlaw, right? He genuinely cares about Betty. At least that's the implication. But from other dudes' perspective, Billy the Kid has basically taken everything from him. There's that one moment, right, where it's Billy the Kid and Betty trick shooting, right, cans or whatever, because that's how it works. And he comes up with his friend, and his friend makes fun of him, being you're just gonna stare at him all day, right? Because he's obviously jealous, but he's jealous for the job too, because at some point he had more power in this situation.
But that's where you could have him craving supernatural power, right?
Yes.
You could have him going towards, which doesn't happen.
No,
it's just pure Western stuff. You could remove the vampire stuff from the movie, and that subplot would have been unaffected.
You'd still have the same movie.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you could rewrite this film as just Billy the Kid. Still. It still wouldn't work because it's not really Billy the Kid. Yeah. You just have to call it something else, right? But if you just took all the Dracula bits out and then
Willie the Kid,
you would call it Willie the Kid, right?
Willie,
right. Make it a romantic story about Billy the Kid dealing with the girl he loves, a cantankerous uncle, right? Which is
Willie the Kid
by
versus Mr. Underhill. And
yes.
Silly. There's so many ways you could fix this movie, but
and he's just a really bad shot. That's why he finally has to throw the gun.
Just gets hit in the face.
It is a pretty hilarious demise for It's almost as undignified as Christopher Lee getting tangled up in a hawthorn bush in The Satanic Rites of Dracula.
It's so dumb, and they filmed it. At least have made there are other people there, right? Because the sheriff and the doctor lady also show up, right? They could have at least been we're gonna wrestle him down and then stake him, because at least then there'd be but no, he just hits him in the face with the butt of a gun. I do love
though, after he does that, and then she just hands in the stake, right? It's scalpel. She's
so mad.
Dude, I told you this is what you need. Yeah, I mean, she's awesome, right? I mean, I do really love her kind of Van Helsing role in it, and she's the way that she's really so rough around the edges, and she has no book learning as a doctor, shall we say? But right, she's patching everyone up anyway, and doing a mighty fine job of it.
And yet she's well versed enough that she can sort of read German.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh
Good
yeah,
for
yeah.
her.
No, I guess what I mean, she doesn't have a formal education as a doctor.
Yeah.
I mean, we do
Yeah.
have
Which she
that
tells us.
wince-inducing. Yes, yeah. There's the wince-inducing line of her husband. He was a real doctor. Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
let's remove that kind of rather forward-looking moment that we thought we had. Uh,
Uh,
and
but
but
she is the
she's
real
still
Yeah,
doctor.
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
And is it the sheriff that specifies sort of derogatively like a female doctor, or was that another character? I
What
forgot.
he
Um,
does, but he kind
he's
of
he's
makes.
a,
I don't. Yeah.
he's a spectacularly useless sheriff too. I mean,
Oh yeah.
he's
Yeah.
He is, yes.
Not
as
very
we
good.
would expect. But yeah.
Yeah. It's weird because everyone else in town's not particularly bothered by the idea that the doctor in town's a woman. The sheriff obviously
The
doesn't
sheriff is bothered.
like.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't necessarily fully respect her, but like he's not like Dracula, who's like calls her a pill swilling
Yes.
whatever woman or whatever he
Yes,
calls her.
yeah.
Right, where he's like incensed, like, how dare you let that woman touch my 18-year-old and pretty that I want, right? Like,
What you just said, David, about ineffective sheriff makes me think of how I was yelling at my screen while I was watching this movie also. After Billy the Kid gets let out, effectively, of the jail cell where he's being held right in front of the sheriff's response is he walks over like to a drawer, I think, and pulls out another like pistol. But there's an giant wall of like rifles and all these shotguns and everything. It's like, why are you not grabbing these to go after the outlaw? Why are you grabbing this one little pistol? Made no sense to me.
that's ridiculous. Oh, well, okay, we got to get to final thoughts and grades so that we can close this out. Because otherwise, we will be making a podcast about a movie that's longer than the movie we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I feel like that can't be allowed. So, Daniel, final thought and grade, go.
Final thought. I'm not going to reiterate what I already said. Instead, I will just say one other thing I did like about this movie that never got mentioned was the music. I think there was actually a theremin in the music in the score. The music was actually really delightful. And despite the movie having so much Western vibe to it, the music was more from the horror side, at least in the key scenes I remember. Perhaps the only exception being the chase of the Native Americans chasing after to destroy the stagecoach. So at the end of the day, I mean, like others have said, this is not great. It is by no means terrible. So I think I would give it a C minus.
Okay. David.
Well, out of curiosity, I had a look at the Best Picture nominees and winner that were handed out in 1966 for films that were made in 1965, of which this is one. So this is also the 60th anniversary of the production of Billy the Kid Meets Dracula. So the winner in 1966 was A Man for All Seasons. And the other nominees were Alfie, The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming, The Sand Pebbles, and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Why do I
Hmm.
bring this up, you might ask? I'm glad you did. Well, with the exception of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, I would lay considerable odds that more people watch and enjoy Billy the Kid Meets Dracula in any given year than the other four films combined. And that's not a bad legacy for Bodine or his film. And this isn't even the one that I would say that gets the of his B films that gets the most views. That would probably be probably the Eight Man. I think would be the one. But who's to say? But it keeps it's there, right? It's entered the pop cultural lexicon and it endures, which nobody, especially him, would have believed when they did this. So I think that's pretty great. And again, you know, uh, if I had a choice between this and Age of Ultron, well, it's going to be this. Right? And we were of course also looking at it. We've had that major shift where now the B movies all now cost hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And which kind of wiped out the old school B movies. But that's another story. Anyway, so that I think is reason to celebrate it. And as for the score, I very much agree with Daniel. It's not the best. It's not the worst. It does more or less the minimum required of what it was set out what it set out to do, even if there's all sorts of missed opportunities. That's the nature of not being the worst or the best. So for me, it's just a middle of the road C.
Okay.
I will add to my final thought that I am very happy I've finally seen this. Back when I was in high school, I got a book called Cult Flicks and Trash Picks that I adored and would go through like it was a religious text. And I, had seen several of the movies already. I tried, hunting down VHS copies, eventually DVD copies of a lot of the entries. I remember Billy the Kid versus Dracula being one where I was like, what the heck? Just from the title alone draws your attention. What is this? And I never got around to seeing it. So I'm happy that now, however many decades later, God, finally got to see it. So sorry for the addition, but Shaun, your final thoughts.
I hate you both.
How often he says that.
I watched this film twice, by the way. We streamed it together for the Discord live watch, and that was perfectly fine. And then because I was like, oh, maybe I missed some important details, I watched it again today before this. And I'll just let everybody know, I did not miss any important details. So when I rewatched it, I didn't necessarily learn anything new. But it did make me try to figure out, why does this film exist? When David has helped fill in the gaps I wasn't able to fill in. I don't think this film's good. Is it fun to watch because it's bad? Kinda. I think. I think if you made this a drinking game where every time Dracula says anything about age or beauty or makes the crazy eyes, you could have a lot of fun, I think, if you wanted to. Is it really, really bad? No, because it's mercifully like an hour and 14 minutes long. And so by the time your blood begins to boil because you don't understand why this is happening and why it took everybody so long and why Billy the Kid has the personality of a turnip, right? By the time you get to that point, the movie ends because Dracula gets hit in the face with the butt of a gun thrown by said turnip, and thus is staked, but also flies away mysteriously, ? I don't know, right? So, I don't know. It's not a C, but I don't despise this movie. I don't know that I have much desire to watch it again. But I will watch Nightbreed again, so there we go. So it's a D+ for me.
One thing you mentioned the length, and I guess that is one of the significant differences between it and the Poverty Row films that Bodine was churning out. The fact that we're now in 1965 and the movie's running 75 minutes. If this were a Poverty Row Western, it would have been done at 60. And possibly before. So, and I think I think that would have certainly been to its benefit if it not only had all these other aspects of the B films from then, but had their concision as well.
Fair point. Well, we averaged out to a C-, by the way, which at some point I'll put up a visual chart for everybody to look at so they can see all of the decisions we've made in our lives and they can critique us in public and then write hate mail about us.
At least that does. I guess it doesn't. We didn't skew the average as badly as I did for the Monster of Camp Sunshine.
Yeah, you ruined like an entire lifetime of data collection, David.
If I had been on that episode, it would have had an A.
Oh Jesus!
My man.
Anyway, we're going to end this show, you bastards. Well, thanks everybody for listening, folks at home, or if you're here live with us at this moment. If you'd like to let us know what you thought, if you've seen this film and you have opinions on it, or you want to watch this film, it is on the YouTubes and various other places. You could watch it whenever you like. You can email us at skiffyfanty@gmail.com. If you are a member of our Patreon, you can also talk to us in the show discussion channel or the movie channel. We have 2 different channels where you could possibly talk about this, so go to the Discord and do that. We are on Blue Sky, Threads, Mastodon, YouTube, and a bunch of other places. So you can find those at skiffyfanty.com/skiffythings, and there's links to all of those different things. Please follow us, share our stuff, all that good stuff. If you missed the live show, obviously if you're listening right now, you are live with us. But if you missed it, we do it every Friday at 7 p.m. Central at twitch.tv/alphabetstreams. So you can watch any show that we do live there. And then if you like what we do, the 3 most important things you can do is spread the word, tell your friends, share our tweets, or we don't do tweets anymore. Share our Scoochie Boochies, whatever they're called, right? Share our Posty McPosts at the various places. Leave reviews on whatever your favorite podcasting apps are. And then right now, our Patreon at patreon.com/skiffyfanty has changed to a pay what you want, get everything model. So literally, you can get all of the stuff we do there for $1 a month if you've got $1 to give up. More is nice. And I have been told that apparently if we get to $100 a month, I am required to stream myself watching the 2019 Cats and having a live reaction to it. So there you go. So we are at $75 a month as of the time of this recording. So it really only takes $25 to get there if you would like to. Oh, God, why am I agreeing to this? Anyway, so there you go.
I'm singing a song from that movie actually tomorrow in a concert. It's a song written by Taylor Swift, I guess, specifically for the movie.
Run.
But the concert's actually like all music of Andrew Lloyd Webber, and this song is actually one of the better pieces, I think, from the stuff that we are singing. Not a huge Andrew Lloyd Webber fan.
Well, you're wrong, but I understand it. Anyway.
And we would like to thank our Patreon supporters, Tanya the Triumphant, Trish the Imperturbable, Vic Thor the Valiant, Andrea the Alluring, Cameron the Chthonic, Caroline the Benevolent, Carrie the Divine, Chris the Candescent, Dan the Transient, Daniel the Cultured,
David the Debonair, JC the Jocular, Jeff the Gracious, Jen the Jabberwocky, Joseph the Jovial, Juan the Junctional, KB the Kind, Karen the Kick-Ass, Kat the Kinematic, Matthew the Magnificent,
and Paul the Pious, Phoebe the Eloquent, Robin the Bold, Ryan the Resilient, Sarah A. the Sensational, Sarah E. the Sublime, Sarah O. the Rapturous, Scott the Gentleman, Stephen the Strange, and Tari the Thorough. So thank you, supporters. Appreciate it. You can find me, ShaunDuke.net, where you can find all my stuff. And then I'm Alphabet Streams on Twitch every Wednesday and Sunday at 6 p.m. Central, except for the next, 3 more Wednesdays when I'll be at 7 p.m. doing TTRPG stuff run by Brandon O'Brien.
And you can find me at my website, davidannandale.com, on Facebook, and on Mastodon at davidannandale at social.horrorhub.club.
You can find me, Daniel, at reading1000lives.com, on the Skiffy and Fanty blog, or reading 1000 Lives on Blue Sky.
All right, it's required by the Skiffy and Fanty bylaws. I need to make this happy. And so David will be very pleased to know that I have elected him to do a low-budget, a low-budget horror movie starring members of the Skiffy and Fanty crew. So there you go. That's your happy. So
okay, that's happy.
I want this to happen. So we're gonna probably have to Kickstarter it. What do you need to do that? like $13, right? You can do it with cell phone.
Yeah.
Perfect. So that's what we're going to be doing, everybody. So on that note, happy ending and scene.